Urgent! Trump's life is hanging by a thread. An assassination attempt in broad daylight. Blood at the residence of the U.S. president. Madness rushed straight at him. Trump is being thrown out of the White House. The Democrats have already set their traps. They're simply seizing power. What they hide from the cameras has come to light. Shocking behind-the-scenes events at the White House. Moscow in ashes. Ukrainian ballistic missiles open the gates of hell. But a Ukrainian development has stunned the entire world. No one has ever had such a weapon before. Putin trembles at just the name. The weapon of death is already on its way. A historic breakthrough or a trap for the dictator. Zelensky and Putin, the negotiations the world has been waiting for over 4 years. The countdown has begun. 21 days until the end of the war. No one expected this. The White House has made a decisive statement. The agreement is already on the table. A nuclear strike on the planet. China has removed the safety catch. The doomsday weapon is already on the move. Secret tests. The world is in panic. All this and more in our upcoming report. Hotspot. In an urgent assassination attempt on Trump, a madman broke into his residence. The blood of Moraleg, a massacre at the gates. Trump is being trapped in a deadly snare. What happened there shocked the entire world. It has become known who the attacker was. See the details.
Another assassination attempt on Trump. The intruder broke into the Mar-a-Lago residence and was shot by security. At that moment, the president was in Washington.
This morning, security service employees discovered that someone had entered the inner grounds of the residence. They went to check and encountered a white male who had a canister of gasoline and a shotgun with him. He was ordered to drop both items, and he dropped the canister but then picked up the shotgun and took a shooting stance. At that moment, a deputy sheriff and 2 Secret Service agents opened fire and neutralized the threat.
This is already the 3rd assassination attempt. In 2024, a man with a rifle was apprehended while waiting for Trump near a golf course. And just a few months earlier, during a campaign rally, a sniper's bullet whizzed past the head of the US president, grazing his ear.
There was blood everywhere, and yet in a way I felt completely safe because God was with me on my side.
All these assassination attempts are not a coincidence, but a natural reaction to Trump's unpopular and eccentric actions. More and more government agencies are speaking out against his policies. The US Supreme Court ruled that Trump had overstepped his authority when he imposed tariffs on imported goods. The court's decision provoked anger and hysteria in the president.
They are extremely unpatriotic and disloyal to our Constitution. In my opinion, the court's decision was influenced by foreign interests and a political movement that is not very large. These people are disgusting and ignorant, and they make themselves heard very loudly. Some judges are afraid of this. They do not want to do the right thing.
There is active opposition to Trump in the Senate, and with such a high disapproval rating ahead of the upcoming fall elections, it is increasingly likely that the Republicans will not win a majority.
I think Donald Trump has never read the Constitution. I think he is simply unaware and doesn't know or understand that it is the foundation of our democracy. I think he doesn't understand what it means to be an American. And no one in his family has ever served in our military. Essentially, the only thing he cares about is how he can extract money from the American people, including his own supporters. I think he's an idiot who has surrounded himself with a bunch of sycophants who just want his approval.
Even the Republicans themselves are opposing Trump introducing bills that overturn his initiatives.
This law essentially recognizes and emphasizes the role we play as a NATO country, cooperating with our allies and ensuring that we do not act against them, and no funds will be spent on this. This is a very clear and straightforward message, and honestly, I never thought I would have to write and present it to Congress.
The Gallup Research Institute, which has been evaluating presidential ratings for 88 years, will no longer be measuring them. Trump's rating. All because of his rapid decline. Back in December of last year, only 36% of the population supported Trump.
I don't think anyone would want to run against us. I have the best numbers of my entire career. The best poll numbers in all of history. I've just ended 8 wars and I'm about to finish the 9th.
A wave of protests has swept across the United States. In a special Senate election in the traditionally Republican state of Texas, the Democratic Party candidate won. Just like before in the New York mayoral election and in the gubernatorial races in Virginia and New Jersey,
the Democrats will do everything possible to impeach the current president and kick him out of the White House. And then, the struggle is quite serious. This is not just a fight for power. It's also a fight for freedom, because Trump may believe that if he is removed from office as President of the United States, As a result of impeachment, he could become the subject of new, and of course old, legal proceedings.
It is obvious that Americans are becoming increasingly hostile toward the president whom they adored just a year ago and elected by an overwhelming majority. All that remains is to guess how soon and with what approval rating Trump will leave the presidential seat.
Moscow is in the crosshairs, Ukrainian ballistic missiles are on the hunt, and Putin is shaking with rage. Meet the new predator. While Kremlin storytellers sing about their invincible air defense, the Ukrainian armed forces have gotten their hands on a real steel hammer. The weapon of death is already in action. How does Ukraine's new trump card change the rules of the game? Watch!
Putin wants the war to continue, so the strikes on Russia go on. Russia keeps burning, and it's all because Ukraine knows how to respond to aggression. Moreover, it continues to develop the means with which it delivers retaliatory strikes. As it has become known, Ukraine, together with Germany, has developed a new drone from Quantum System. This is the Rad Target drone. It was already demonstrated during the visit of the Ukrainian delegation to the first Ukrainian-German joint production facility.
A target drone is often used to comprehensively evaluate the operational capabilities of air defense systems, whether they are those that have been recently developed, or to rigorously verify the technical specifications of existing ones. They are used to conduct exercises and to train new personnel for these systems. Air defense operators, especially beginners who are operating an anti-aircraft self-propelled system, or even a surface-to-air missile system, or a missile and gun system like the RPK, need to practice striking at moving targets for a reason.
The tactical and technical specifications are still being kept secret, but it is known that the drone will be launched from a catapult, and it is equipped with a jet engine that can reach speeds of up to 450 kilometers per hour. And according to experts, it is very likely that it can also carry a combat payload, which already changes the purpose of the drone itself.
First and foremost, this is a target drone, but we have repeatedly seen examples with you where target drones, they have been equipped, among other things, with warheads, and have had the capability to be used directly as a strike element. Therefore, I cannot entirely dismiss the possibility that this specific drone is, in fact, a truly multifunctional drone. Not only as a target, for example, for domestic production in European countries, specifically Germany and so on, but it can also be used to mount a warhead on it and use it accordingly for delivering strikes at medium distances. In other words, this drone is designed specifically to impact the enemy's medium rear zone, whether it's temporarily occupied territories or the territory of the Russian Federation. It could be 10 kilograms, 20, 30, 50, or even 100. Accordingly, any target drone as a result, at some point in the future, could even become a strike drone.
Ukraine continues to develop its technologies and defense industry. And as has already become known, as many as 10 factories for the production of Ukrainian drones will open in Europe this year. That's why we will increasingly see retaliatory strikes against Russia. But it's not just about drones. On January 11th, the British authorities announced their intention to create a powerful ballistic missile, Night Hawk, specifically for Ukraine. The statement from the British government indicated that the new ballistic missile can carry a 200-kilogram warhead and has a range of 500 kilometers. And these are just the initial figures. As stated by the UK Minister for the Armed Forces, London is firmly determined to provide Ukrainians with more weapons.
A safe Europe needs a strong Ukraine. These new British long-range missiles will allow Ukraine to stay in the fight and will make Putin worry.
But Night Hawk is not the only missile being prepared for delivery to Ukraine. 6 European countries are creating another new cruise missile. Germany, France, Britain, Italy, Poland, and Sweden have signed an agreement to develop it. According to Western sources, this project is known as OWE 500+. The price for such a missile will be lower than the market rate. Moreover, the new systems are supposed to be intelligent enough to reach Western targets without manual control. Who exactly, whether Ukraine or Russia has the advantage in drone missiles is still hard to say. But what is known is that the Kremlin clearly did not expect such resistance from the Ukrainians, even in the 4th year of the war.
Through defensive actions, we are simply exhausting the Russian occupation forces at the tactical, operational, and operational tactical levels. Although as of today, even in In principle, even since 1925, the Russian Federation has not demonstrated any success at the operational tactical level, none at all. Even its offensive actions, this summer offensive campaign, it did not show that the Russian troops were able to cover a range of areas across the regions of Ukraine that would have allowed them to break through the Ukrainian defenses, cause the collapse of the defense, or achieve some other breakthroughs deep into our defensive lines. No, nothing of the sort. They advanced very slowly through forest belts, across fields, through villages that had been practically reduced to ashes. Nothing on a global scale. And in principle, Ukraine now holds a dominant position as the country occupying defensive positions.
The exhaustion of the Russians is happening not only at the front, but also in the rear. After all, as we have already seen, strikes on Russia's vulnerable points have not stopped. Ukraine is maximizing both the assistance from its partners and its own defense industry. Flamingos are already destroying the largest ammunition depots in the Russian rear. Ukrainian flamingos are also striking at training grounds, for example, Kapustin Yar, from which Russia launches Oreshnik. Here's how the flamingo flies. Oil refineries, factories, and military units are burning. The Ukrainian SAPSAN missile system with ballistic missiles has entered serial production and systematic deployment. And here is the range of the SAPSAN. Moreover, according to some expert assessments, SAPSAN has an advantage in speed over the American attack MS, and it can easily strike Moscow. Some sources claim that Ukraine is already using these missiles, but the information about where and how remains classified. Let's not forget about the Storm Shadow either. And HIMARS, which according to Russian TV, are supposedly being destroyed in batches, but somehow they still keep hitting the power plants. And the Russian panic is most visible on Russian TV because even there they've started talking about how strong the Ukrainians are.
If Ukraine, just imagine for a moment, survives, if after the conflict ends the Kyiv regime remains in place, if this army is preserved, if Europe rearms this army and Ukraine is accepted into the European Union, believe me, in 5 years it won't be Germany, France, Italy, Poland, or anyone else running the European Union. It will be Ukraine running things there. Moreover, it will do so fully aware that it is its own Ukrainian army. If it wants, it could march across all of Europe. And no French, German, or any other army, not even Moronia's, could stop it.
The demilitarization that Putin so desperately wanted to carry out in Ukraine has failed spectacularly. Now, strikes on Russian territory have become more frequent and more powerful because Ukraine knows how to respond to aggression. Shock. The moment of truth has arrived. A meeting between Zelensky and Putin. A new round of negotiations. The US slammed its fist on the table. This is the end of the war. The Kremlin has found itself in a tough trap. Kyiv managed to pull it off. All the details of the behind-the-scenes agreements. Watch.
In the coming weeks, they may meet face-to-face. Volodymyr Zelensky and Vladimir Putin are preparing to sit down at the same negotiating table. We
reduced everything to a single question, and we discussed various options for resolving this issue. That means it is solvable. So if both sides want to solve this problem, we will solve it.
But the US President's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, is clearly being disingenuous. Each side in the negotiations has far more goals and problems. And when it comes to the issue of a ceasefire, Kyiv and Moscow approach it from completely opposite perspectives. As for Volodymyr Zelensky, he outlined his vision for ending the hostilities in a major interview with the BBC that was released the day before.
Today, stopping Putin and not allowing him to occupy Ukraine, that is a victory for peace.
According to the Ukrainian leader, Putin will never voluntarily agree to a complete ceasefire. For the bunker dweller, a ceasefire is a forced measure, since the occupier's army has exhausted all its resources and could collapse at any moment.
I believe that Putin needs this pause. He also needs this pause. That's true. No matter what he says, it's true. And when he recovers, our European partners say it will take 3 to 5 years. In my opinion, he will be able to recover in a couple of years, no more. So where he will go next, we don't know. But the fact that he will want to continue.
Putin himself doesn't really hide his plans to continue the so-called special military operation. The bunker dweller may not give interviews in front of cameras, only occasionally, but he does appear whenever he gets the chance. He reminds Russians that the war will be long, exhausting, and increasingly bloody.
You know, when the world around us feels perfectly calm, measured, and stable here, we quickly begin to feel restless and bored. To us, it feels like stagnation, and we start to crave some real action. But as soon as that action finally starts, things start spinning out of control and go completely haywire. And that is when we realize that every single second truly counts. And bullets, unfortunately, bullets are whistling now. So we're scared. It's terrifying, just terrifying. Really, it's terrifying. And
Putin doesn't even hide the fact that he's doing everything to make this horror settle in every Russian family. We
do not consider ourselves responsible for the deaths of people because we did not start this war.
Instead of focusing on peaceful negotiations, the Kremlin is pouring all state resources into the military-industrial complex.
The stable and steady operation of the defense industry organizations, including the fulfillment of export contracts, has largely become possible thanks to timely government support measures. And
while Donald Trump is fantasizing about yet another peace agreement with Russia until the summer of 2026, Moscow is actively recruiting.
It is now actively seeking to forge a network of strategic new allies for itself to strengthen its global position and influence.
The poorest African countries, Putin is counting on massively recruiting cannon fodder in the future to continue the war. The volumes
of military exports, according to the plan for 2026, which we will finalize and approve today, must increase significantly.
All this indicates that the Kremlin is not just preparing for World War III. Putin has already started it.
I believe that Putin has already started it. The question is how much territory he can seize. And the question is how to stop him. Not so that Russia doesn't win. Russia wants to bring its own world and change the lives of people who like the way things are.
The same thing is being openly pushed to the masses from the podium by the Russian dictator, just wrapped in different packaging. Supposedly, there are enemies everywhere, imposing on Russians an alien way of life, centralized water supply and indoor toilets, as well as gas heating, electricity, and democracy.
their unification was based on completely different principles. They were united by the desire for profit, the wish to seize something from us, to conquer, destroy, and capture. And we were united by the desire to preserve everything, our common land, our families, our culture, our traditions.
How Putin and his generals preserve land, culture, and traditions is clearly visible in the example of Ukrainian cities wiped off the face of the earth by Russian liberators.
This is very important, this is good, and it needs to be supported.
It turns out that while Volodymyr Zelensky is doing everything he can to achieve real peace, Putin and his generals are doing everything possible to keep the war going. That's why Western countries should firmly suppress the Kremlin's ambitions, not try to appease the man in the bunker.